G'day and welcome to the Make It with Myles podcast. I'm Myles Clark, your beloved host, and we have two formats of the podcast. We have the shed, which is where we discuss all things about building, construction, all those goodies, as well as the property industry through the lens of a building inspector. And we also have the journey. The journey is more of a personal development thing that I dabble in every now and then because I like it. You should like it. You should get better. Everyone gets better. We all get better. Fucking crack on. Now, on this episode, it is a shed episode, and we will be discussing, can I build over an easement? A fucking number one question that everyone tells me and asks me all the fucking time. So I thought I'll just do a video on it and podcast on it, and then you can all sit back and relax. So what is an easement? An easement is where we have services within the ground that are more or less utilities or owned by the council or owned by power companies or anything like that. Okay, so we're talking about sewer, we're talking about storm water, mains gas, just underground utility assets. Okay, now what you'll find in most sort of areas is there's easements that might run across the backyard of your home or maybe the side of your house, which does occur. So if it runs across the back of your house, your sewer or your storm water might discharge to that area. Usually it's could be both. Discharge that back area, or it might be a mains gas line that they've run to supply the city, and it sort of runs out and around and all that sort of stuff. Now, building over the easement is acceptable. You are allowed to do it. There's no reason why you can't do it. There's only specific things that you can build, and there's specific things that you can't build. The idea behind what you can and what you can't build is that if anything was to occur to that service within the ground, you need to be able to provide access for that asset, council, whatever they may be, to rectify or fix that issue in your backyard. That's why you can't have things like swimming pools, the structure of your house, types of buildings that you're going to be demolishing that it's going to be very impactful to the easement itself, okay? Other things that you can allow, that are allowed to be done are things like sheds, decks, temporary structures, so like granny flats and shit like that, driveways, fences, and that's because these things are what can be removed, reinstated. Usually what happens if you've got like a shed, for an example, they want you to have like crushed rock or like an area where you can sort of inspect through the slab itself. What you find is most people just put crushed rock down, or they get approved to put a concrete slab in place, but if anything was to happen, they will just remove the shed, cut your slab out, fix it all up, then they'd have to reinstate it, okay? The process more or less the process here to actually build over your easement is you need to ask permission, all right? You actually have to go to the council and put a permit in place, which is called a build over easement permit, and apply for it, okay? With that, you will have to supply specific drawings, layouts of the site, what you're putting in place. If you're putting footings in place, so for example, if it's a shed, you need to show where that easement is within the structure itself, how the footing system is not going to impact that specifically. What you'll find is, like, if you've got this pipe like this and you've got footings either side, the footings are going to have to go past the actual easement itself on the angle of oppose. So there is technically no load sitting on top of that easement that could potentially crush it, cause damage, things like that. Okay, you can't just cut in a raft slab 450 deep that sits literally directly on top of a fucking old as shit pipe in the ground, because then you're at the risk of actually making an absolute mess of yourself and causing issues and destroying the local utility assets. Once you get all these documentations in place, there'll be other things like title documentation, that sort of stuff. Like, you actually have to do a decent design of what's going where and be very clear with it, okay? Because they want to know that you are not going to impact that asset one bit. So you might even have to get to a situation where you've got to locate it as well to understand exactly where it is. So you can do dial before you dig, which shows you roughly the as-builts. An as-built is called as-built, where it actually was located. But I never trust those, and they're a pain in the ass. So more or less, if you do your dial before you dig, you've got a sewer main at the back of your house, you really want to understand from pit to pit exactly where that location is, and you need to know the depths of it as well. Most of the time the depths are pretty accurate, I must admit, and then you're all fucking well good to go. So once you collate all that information, that's when you issue that to the council. Now, what the council are going to do next is then they will give you approval to do it. So they'll say, yep, based on all your drawings and what you're going to put in place, we are happy with it. They might have some conditions they've got to put in place, but basically, usually it's pretty well all good to go. And then you can proceed with the construction drawings, okay? So don't put your effort into getting permits in place, doing construction drawings and going into like full detail. You just need a little basic layout of like what we're doing. Once it gets approved, because you need that approval for anything to occur, then take the next step and do your construction drawing. So that's going to be more, I don't know, you might have a little shed out the back. It's just a bit more detail in regards to it, or maybe a decking or something like that. Then you can go through the building permit process, okay? So the building permit process, there'll be a section in there to say that it is being built over an easement, and then you have to supply them with your build over easement application that's been approved, and then you can build the new asset in your backyard. So that's more or less the basics in regards to building over an easement. So you can't build structures like swimming pools and renovations and extensions over the top of an easement. You can build it near an easement within reason. Basically, in those situations, you're going to have really deep footings so that structure will not impact that asset at all. Or you can have temporary structures, temporary structures are completely fine. Sheds, decks, like pathways, temporary buildings like a granny flat that might just be on a couple of footings and just sitting there. Things like that are completely acceptable, but you need to go through that approval process. Don't fucking go ahead and do what you want, because if you get to a situation where you actually impact that asset, the liability on you is going to be through the roof, and it's not a situation you really want to be in. So make a smart decision. Do it the right bloody way. Get the right people involved so you'll have no dramas, because we can barely afford the asset or the deck itself, so you don't want to be paying extra things if you fuck up big time. So anyway, thanks for that. Hope you enjoyed that episode and got something out of it. Give us a fucking rating, give us a share, all those good things associated with that, and we will see you on the next one. Hooroo.